Commander is the main narrator in Roblox TDS. He gives you advice from the very beginning of the tutorial to the ends of the hardest boss in the game. And one thing is for certain, he knows more about TDS than anyone else. Or does he? To test this out, I tried to beat the 3 main game modes of TDS using only the dialogue that Commander has in game. And some of his advice is questionable at best. So let's jump into easy mode. But wait. First, I needed a loadout, of course, and the towers I chose were gonna be made purely off of the tower's description in the shop. For example, Rocketeer apparently shoots fast rockets that deal large damage with huge range, whilst Engineer kinda just exists. In the end, I chose these 5 towers, which was an interesting combination, but nonetheless, I hopped into the first game. On wave 1 of easy mode, Commander told me to place down towers, specifically close to the path. I placed my 2 shotgunners as close to the red line as I could, and they were unsurprisingly able to kill all of the wave 1 zombies. Because the first few waves of easy mode just send more of the same enemies, the shotgunners fought off the first few waves like a boss. I don't know why I said that. That was until Commander warned me about speedy enemies that were incoming. Apparently I needed to place down burst towers to be able to kill them, because you know, 2 shotgunners couldn't possibly kill 5 speedies. So I placed down my burst tower in the form of a toxic gunner. Not the best tower, but it does the job. The shotgunner and toxic combo ended up working surprisingly well actually. The toxic gunners slowed the zombies down, whilst the shotgunners got extra time to deal their high damage. And because of this combo, I was able to deal with the slows, which the Commander gave no instructions on, and make it all the way to wave 6, where it became a little too much for the level 0 towers. And now the leaking had begun. For now, the damage I took was fine. The zombies weren't really strong this early on, but later on, leaking like this wouldn't be as forgiving. But you know, I would never leak on easy mode anyway. Right, guys? Right. Luckily, Commander gave me instructions on wave 7 again, where he told me to upgrade my units. I would have personally liked to save that money for something like a turret, but hey, I'm not the expert here. Besides, the upgraded towers did end up killing the first boss fairly easily, so who even needs a turret? I do. It turns out upgrading these units wasn't all bad though, as these 3 towers helped me get through the next 2 waves with ease. It would have probably got me through more than that if it wasn't for hidden enemies, which Commander told me to counter by upgrading my units. Again. For now though, I was just barely able to beat the hiddens Commander warned me about, and it didn't get any better from here. Commander apparently went mute or something because he was completely silent, not even warning me about the types of enemies approaching anymore. The boss approached and yeah, they weren't strong enough to kill it. Thankfully, on wave 13, he told me to prepare for a necromancer, and I prepared by placing down a turret and setting its targeting mode to strongest to prioritize the necromancer first. I'm telling you guys, this turret was a lifesaver, literally. But the turret sadly couldn't solve all my problems, as Commander warned me about loud thuds in the distance and told me I should prepare. A tiny bit scared, I took his advice and upgraded my turret to level 2, and also placed down the most OP tower in the game, Rocketeer. With the best tower in the game placed, the boss zombie was no match for me. But there was still one thing missing according to Commander, a unit to slow the enemies. Though I already have that. Oh well, the sledger apparently has powerful blows according to the item's description, so might as well place them down. The sledgers actually ended up helping a little bit with the slower, tankier enemies. Ironically, the very thing Commander told me the slowing units were not made for, but ultimately I wanted to save my money for turret upgrades, not sledgers, because I was still struggling with enemies above 3000 health, and the gravedigger was only 2 waves away with 10 times that. The last wave before the boss was especially challenging, with speedy bosses, necromancers, breakers, and to top it all off, a slow boss. And everything just kinda got too overwhelming for my towers, and the slow boss ended up leaking with over over 100 health left. But I didn't have time to worry about that now, as the gravedigger himself had now arrived. And Commander never told me to upgrade my towers again, so all I can do was cope and say to myself that I was going to make it. No, hope, not cope. I said hope. The zombies he spawned with thankfully died pretty quickly though, but the gravedigger still had pretty much all of his health left after the first turn. It didn't help either that he summoned in more zombies so that no tower could focus on damaging him, and when he stunned all of my towers as soon as they got in range, I knew I had to bring in more DPS. In a last-ditch effort, I placed down a second turret and moved my sledgers so that they were in range. This isn't cheating, guys. Commander told me to do my best. And with the increased DPS of my turrets, he wasn't that challenging to take down, and I ended up winning the first game. Yay! This means that the commander actually knows how to beat easy mode, but there are 2 modes left that are much harder. So let's hop into game number 2. On wave 1, Commander tells me to once again place towers, but this time he doesn't tell me that they need to be close to the path. This meant that I could place my towers much more optimally, but I was an idiot and placed them close to the path anyway. Nice. Now, because of Commander's new instructions, I didn't bring a shotgunner either, so my entire early game defense would have to be centered around toxic gunners. A strategy I surprisingly hadn't heard of before. I wonder why. The toxic gunners were actually pretty decent at taking care of the early game though, and this set of towers wasn't all that bad, whilst the damage wasn't amazing. Their slowing ability made up for it, and they managed to take out the enemies fairly easily all the way till wave 10 actually, where Commander told me to upgrade my towers. Are you serious? To make it even worse, Commander warned about hidden enemies that weren't coming and told me to upgrade my towers. Again. The problem was, Toxic Gunner doesn't have hidden detection at any level. I let the A-tenants leak, bringing me down to 168 health, which wasn't ideal, but with the waves ticking by, on wave 15 I was literally pooping my pants when Commander warned about another wave of hiddens, this time like 4 times the size. So I stood there and counted and watched them slowly decimate my base. I somehow managed to tank that with a clean 8 health left, and whilst this was a miracle, the problem still wasn't solved. I still had no hidden detection to my name, and a necromancer spawning 1 hidden enemy would be enough to take me down at this point. But luckily, Commander finally started talking on wave 19, warning me about a necromancer. So I finally got a chance to place down my beloved turret. I love you, turret. Surprisingly, Commander talked 2 waves in a row, because on wave 20 he told me that I needed a lot of firepower for another boss. Wait, did he just say firepower? See guys, it's pyromancers, they shoot fire. Now with my pyromancers placed down, I was able to easily shred the moltens and make it to wave 22, where there once again were loud thuds in the distance. By this point I already know what that meant, so I placed down a rocketeer further in the back to help clean up some of the leaks, and I also made sure to place it optimally in the middle of the map. Only took me 22 waves to realize that. The rocketeer did some good work though, and me and the rocket man kept on crushing, although I was still having some serious doubts about my set of towers when I yet again almost lost the game to a hidden enemy. Now on wave 30, I had over $20,000 in the bank. Almost like in real life, yo! Yeah, true. No, that's not true. So I could afford a lot of different towers. Maybe a high level turret, maybe some upgrades for my toxic gunner, 8 level 1 rocketeers. Peak value. I also made sure on wave 32, when Commander told me to prepare for the worst, to upgrade my turret to level 3 and place down a second one for good measure. But don't worry Rocketeers, I'm gonna waste my money on you soon enough. Ooh, he got green eyes and stuff. Wow. Still, with only 1 wave to go before the molten boss, I was getting kind of nervous. And after killing the last few enemies, it was time. I received one final message telling me to shoot him with everything I had, so yeah, I unfortunately had to say goodbye to my pyromancers, but now it was time for a boss fight. The molten boss was a big boy, and with him came a lot of other enemies, which took my towers quite some time to clear up, specifically these molten titans here that have 3500 health each. Nice. It took my towers so long to take this down, in fact, that the molten boss had passed the first corner basically untouched. Something that would make this fight even harder was his constant ability spamming. He would either stomp, spawn enemies, or throw fireballs, which hindered my enemies from basically ever firing at him. He passed the second corner, having only lost about 12,000 health out of his 70,000, and now with only one corner remaining, I was getting desperate. I sold my old turrets and moved them to the new side, but it was beginning to feel more and more hopeless the further he went. I placed down some last-ditch effort toxic gunners, but it was clear that this round was lost. Yep, I was a sad boy when I saw that screen. But Commander sent me some motivational words to cheer me up, tell me that we'll get him next time, and I still had one game mode left. Fallen. Now, these other two game modes, they have been easy. They have been child's play, even though I lost, but whatever. This is the real challenge. I can take a molten loss, but I am not losing on the most iconic game mode in TDS. So the first order of action was, of course, changing my loadout. So bye-bye Sledger and welcome back Shotgunner, with a new skin this time. Zoinks. Okay, why did I write that? So I clicked on survival and hopped into the final game mode. On wave 1 of my run, Commander tells me to simply get ready for the Fallens. The only thing I could afford at the moment was 2 shotgunners, so that's what I placed down. With a new skin this time. Wow. Okay, no one cares, okay. Now, it will come to nobody's surprise that Fallen is way harder than easy or molten, so I would sadly have to use some actual strategy in this game. I changed the targeting mode of the second shotgunner to farthest because the shotgunner's bullets pierce through multiple enemies at once, so I technically increased the damage on the shotgunner by hitting more enemies. I know guys, I'm extremely smart. This genius strategy didn't work for long though, as speedies now are approaching with way more health than once in easy or molten. Luckily, Commander had my back and told me to place down a toxic gunner, which allowed me to take the speedies down. I was rocking the good old toxic gunner shotgunner combo, but now on like 3 times the difficulty. So yeah, it wasn't surprising when as soon as the heavies started rolling in, I started leaking. And I needed some flex tape badly because I was leaking a lot. The heavies kept coming wave after wave, and I was on wave 6 already struggling to deal with all the zombies, and I knew I had to skip a wave to get Commander to talk. This turned out to be a huge mistake though, as the only thing Commander did was comment on the coming Fallen Squire with 300 HP without giving me any instructions. At this point I had pretty much just accepted my fate, and shortly thereafter I lost the game. But I wasn't done just yet. I pretty much already knew that Fallen would be basically impossible solo, and a molten loss I could accept, but I was on a mission. I had to win on Fallen mode to prove that Commander knows what he's talking about, to prove all the Commander haters wrong. So I did what no man dared. I queued up for duo Fallen randoms. I actually think a lot of people dare to do that. Well, I'm sorry. So now I was back at it again with a teammate, who we will call Javier. Now, Javier was more of the quiet kind. He didn't really talk much, but one thing he did was use consumables. He used just an unnecessary amount of consumables. Maybe not always using them correctly, but I think he just liked the sound, to be honest. But he hadn't placed anything besides a medic yet, and we were only one wave away from wave 7, where I died last game. Thankfully, he used some of his money to place down a harvester. With the help of the medic and harvester, we were able to just barely survive through the next few waves, but we were still not strong enough to beat wave 7 fully, and we took some damage. Yeah, it wasn't going the greatest, and only 2 waves later, we got very close to dying again, being saved only by Commander requesting hidden detection detection at the last second, which Rocketeer has on level 2. Unfortunately, Javier continued his focus on the farming life, and we just weren't prepared for the next few waves. With Javier only having placed down one DJ booth since his harvester, I knew that it was over when Commander warned us about incoming Fallens. Javier wanted to restart, we tried again, and yeah, we died even earlier this time. I returned to the lobby, feeling disheartened and beat up, and I really just felt like giving up. But I remembered the wise words of Commander and kept on pushing anyway. I queued up for a trios game, but just got a guy begging to do quests and then leaving when nobody wanted to do it. Followed up by a guy leaving, a guy speaking Russian, the same guy that left for the quest last time returning and then leaving. And after all that, finally a real game with Lightning McQueen and Javier Jr. with now the armor. Very cool. Me and McQueen had some nice conversations since he was the first guy who actually talked, and things seemed to be going overall a lot better. We had a few mishaps when we tanked some heavies on wave 9, but nothing really crazy. They even got some slashers down that helped us get to wave 15, where the necromancer spawned. Of course, he wasn't a big threat to our towers, and he only had a few hundred health left, so maybe an airstrike could be used for something, and no, McQueen sent a nuke. Okay, maybe 50,000 damage on 500 health was a tiny bit excessive, but it just had a McQueen aura, what can I say. Now, at this point, I had a nice amount of money saved up, and I was just waiting for my next command to spend it. My plan was to buy rangers for the upcoming flying enemies, since if our defense lacked anything, it was flying detection. I also hadn't really contributed at all to our defense so far, so I felt I would actually play a role in this match if I got them placed down. Sadly, Commander was feeling more of the Javier aura instead, as he didn't say a word until wave 27, where he finally told me to prepare for a boss or something. I don't know. I don't remember. So I placed down a ranger at the end of this cliff and upgraded it to level 3, and it was able to easily kill the flying enemies with some extra support from the other cliff. Gotta love the propeller skin, by the way. Please subscribe so I can get my own skin one day. Please. But now there were only 10 waves left until the Fallen King. It felt like we were unstoppable, but we unfortunately had one major weakness: flying detection. Now, I had placed down a couple of rangers, and Javier Jr. had also placed down some pretty high level mortars, and them together took care of the flying enemies fairly well. But there was one thing we hadn't accounted for: jesters. These guys buff nearby enemies and give them way higher health and speed, and our defense just wasn't strong enough to take down the buffed flying enemies. And with only a couple of waves left until the Fallen King, we died. Now at this point, I felt incredibly defeated. I had played for a very good chunk of time, and I was just about ready to give up and call it a day. This time, like, actually, I just wanted to go to bed. But then, the wise words of Commander came back to me once again: we'll get him next time. So I gathered my final bits of strength, hit survival, and queued up for one final game. As soon as I dropped into the game, I knew we would need some good team chemistry to be able to make it to the end. So I tried to get some good laughs in by telling my team a joke. Yesterday, my friend asked me if I had gotten a haircut, but I responded that no, I just decided to get them all cut. I placed down my 2 shotgunners, this time much closer to the entrance. I don't know why I didn't place them here this entire time, and they were actually kinda carrying the early game, not gonna lie. Until Wikia Color's secret clone placed down 2 golden cowboys that did way better than my shotgunners. He kinda ruined the moment for me. Beside my YouTuber teammates, we also got Javier Jr., who of course was farming. And even though everything we had was golden cowboys and underleveled shotgunners, we still were able to beat all the earlier waves without any leaks. Me and Wikia Color started playing with our bumper carts, this is the best emote in the game, whilst Javier Jr. was still farming. Luckily, on wave 9, Commander prompted me to place down a Rocketeer because we needed hidden detection. And this Rocketeer ended up kinda saving us, you know, no thanks to this accelerator or anything. Wait, accelerator? Oh, Javier Jr. actually placed something, and it wasn't a useless tower either. That was an accelerator. History was about to be rewritten. The family tree of Javier's were about to do something useful in game. But then Wave 15 came around, and the celebration went to a quick halt with the necromancer spawning in. Commander told me to play something quick, but I didn't have enough money for the accelerator that I wanted. Thankfully, the other enemies that spawned were cleared up at this point, and the cowboys started laying into the necromancer. They got him down to 290 health, but now everything except the level 0 accelerator and the rocketeer were out of range. That was way too close though. For now, the danger was over at least, and I made sure to place down my accelerator during this brief moment of chillness. That's not a word. And whilst I was admiring my Excel skin's beauty, I noticed that my teammate had a plushy DJ skin, and he told me that it cost him $50 to get it where he lives. Seriously, below, not even Corso's plush is that expensive, come on man. The DJ booth did help out the game though, as it made it way cheaper to get some extra firepower on the field on wave 27 when the fallen shield spawned in. My choice of firepower was the ranger, as I wasn't gonna let the same thing that happened last game happen again. And yeah, the ranger absolutely smashed the boss. But only 4 waves later, it was here. Wave 31, the wave where I died last game. I saw those jesters menacingly walking through the crowd, and I knew that this was gonna be tough. They began throwing their presents all over the place, and basically every enemy on the map became buffed. We were able to take down the jesters in the first turn, but they weren't the biggest issue. It turns out the fallen giants became really fast when buffed, and they were able to make it to the last turn along with the flying seraphs. And only through some really well-timed ranger shots and APCs from the commander were we able to take the giant down along with the last few seraphs. I was genuinely tweaking seeing that, so much so that I wrote out an audible pew in the chat. I don't know if that's cringe or not, but I was very relieved having survived. But we weren't done yet. We still had 9 more waves to go before the final boss. And remember, these waves weren't getting any easier, so I strapped on my fighting gloves and pushed through the last few waves. I placed down a second accelerator. I upgraded my accelerator to level 2. An honor guard spawned. I placed down a turret. I sat in my bumper cart. That's it. Javier finished his farms. I placed some final towers. The final instruction from the commander was simple: take the fallen king out quickly. This guy was going down no matter what, and I was going to give it my absolute best. I started off by running to the back of the map and placing down 2 more rangers, as they would be able to keep the fallen king on the radar for longer. I also placed down a second turret for extra DPS, and we were already cooking the fallen king, with a quarter of his health being gone before the first corner. The enemies he spawned with were a bit of a struggle. We eventually cleared them up fairly quickly, and now there was just the fallen king left. We started laying into him, and I even heard commander yelling. He tried desperately to attack my rocketeers, but at that moment it was pretty clear that the fallen king was done, and he was defeated mid-attack. And there you have it! Commander can beat the easiest and hardest mode in TDS just with the power of some friendship. But wait, didn't I miss some?